So I think what people really want to hear from you, it's a little bit about the partnership between Stellar Development Foundation and MoneyGram. So for those who are not familiar about it, what is it about, Danelle?
Yeah, so I'll start and talk about the part that we were really focused on. This is one of the things that we get hounded about, Alex and I, that it's not, we don't say this enough, or maybe he says I don't say it enough, but it is truly the most unique example of the collaboration from traditional financial infrastructure to blockchain, crypto. And what it is really reaching the cash economy. And so you can now have $10 in your hand and put your details into your wallet, walk into MoneyGram, and convert that instantly into USDC on Stellar. And then you can send that, you can hold it. Yeah, no, yay! You can do so much of what we get to do in the traditional financial infrastructure. We can send value, we can hold value, we can buy things with it, or you can choose to then take it off, and you can do the same thing by just walking into MoneyGram, putting your information into your wallet, and then getting the code to walk up and just get your cash out. It is truly remarkable, and it is the only thing that's out there like this. Before this, it really had to have a credit card or a bank account to be able to make this happen. It's very exciting.
Yeah, no, it's you know, coming from the other side of things, I think it's pretty remarkable. You know, MoneyGram, we're global, 200 countries and territories. We have over 400,000 physical locations, and we've sort of been on a journey to transform our business, to think differently about the consumers we interact with, the use cases around their experiences and what they're looking for, and to have so many digital-first crypto organizations, companies coming to us and saying, can we leverage your services for reaching our customers that otherwise we can't touch, is, I think it's pretty remarkable for MoneyGram as well. And to think about the many comments out there about, you know, displacing MoneyGram and doing it better than MoneyGram, and, you know, taking over, you know, sort of the remittance world, which, you know, I wish everyone in the crypto space good luck with, because it's really fun. So, but that being said, you know, it's also about how we all partner together, how we interoperate, how we serve the customer's needs globally. And so for us, it's just, I think, tremendously cool to be able to sit back and say, you know, MoneyGram participates in that completely different world than we ever would have thought about, you know, probably 5 years ago. The other aspect of it, too, that I think is quite remarkable is, as many of you know that have studied the space and think about how money moves around the world, right? It's incredibly inefficient. That's, you know, what I think the nexus of blockchain and crypto are all about. But in the fiat world, you know, walls, economies, political regimes are built to keep their citizens safe. Now, we can agree or disagree whether they do a good job of that, but right, the idea is that you have sovereign nations and they want to protect their borders, and so moving money cross-border becomes very, very complicated. And so when you think about the various applications of funds flow, and you think about how that works, the way that MoneyGram sort of more or less cheats the system is we pre-position money all around the world so that we can instantly pay out and instantly collect funds from our partners, so that consumers can have money really within seconds. What's difficult about that is it takes an incredible amount of funding to really run that organization, run that business. We have to have hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions, deployed around the world at any moment in time. Through this relationship and through what we're doing with USDC and the stablecoin settlement side of it, MoneyGram's actually paid for the first time in any transaction flow because of the way that we can actually settle USDC real time, which is also incredibly remarkable and really fucking cool when you think about sort of the evolution of money and flows and settlement and the traditional payment rails. So anyway, it's really awesome.
It's truly that interoperability that we talk about so much. We never wanted to displace, we always wanted to enhance. And I think that this actually demonstrates the ability to not improve upon, but provide different rails too, which is, I think, a really beautiful part of what blockchain can do.
Can you talk a little bit in practice what it means for the consumers? Because I think a lot of people will be watching this after. Can you explain how does it change in the real world? How does it work?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of you who know Stellar Development Foundation know that we're focused on creating equitable access to the global financial system. And that means that there are so many people who are either what we call de-risked or not allowed to participate in traditional financial infrastructure. And that isn't necessarily because banks don't want them as customers, but they have to think about the risk associated with them. And unfortunately, that means that there are 60% of adults globally that actually work in the informal economy. And so they get cash. And so when you have cash and you don't have a bank account, what do you do with that cash? Well, I'll tell you, even my nanny, she actually takes the cash and she keeps it at her house because she doesn't want a bank account because she doesn't trust the U.S. government and doesn't trust local banks. She's from Colombia, and so that's part of the challenge. And so when you think about that, what we're trying to do is be able to offer those types of services that are traditionally thought of as banking services, but through wallets that you custody, that you own the keys for, that you hold the keys for. There was a panel earlier today that talked about non-custodial and custodial wallets, but when you actually remove those intermediaries, you remove a lot of the fear that users may have of having their assets sitting somewhere outside their home. And so it just creates such an opportunity. With that, when they actually can hold their cash in digital assets, they can choose to do a lot of different things. They can hold it, they can in Argentina, for example, some of you may know that there's a challenge with inflation, and you can hold it in US dollars in the Stellar USDC so that you can hedge against what's happening in the market. These are all things that you couldn't do with cash. And so this is just a huge opportunity for us. It is something that I think it was actually a month after I started in May of 2019. Alex and I first met. Took a long time to convince this one, but we're here, and now we've been live since June. So it's a huge change in, I think, what we can offer the folks that sit outside the formal economy.
Yeah, and Alex, we are here in a crypto conference, and we are talking about cash, right?
I know, it's awesome.
So why does it matter? Like, why should we worry about cash still, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, right? I mean, money moves around the world for very, very basic purposes, right? I mean, there are certainly use cases for, higher dollar sending and for, business purposes and all sorts of other things. But at the end of the day, the core of what we do is about remittances and sending money home, right? People getting money back to their friends and families. And typically those funds are spent, or a portion of those funds are spent within 24 hours, and it's on your basic shelter, food, education, healthcare. And in many markets around the world, in many countries, as you all know, the payments infrastructure is not where it needs to be. I think we've seen huge change over the last several years in that, right? You're seeing a lot of wallets coming up, new financial services, fintech, leveraging mobile technology, leveraging new forms of internet, et cetera. So access is changing, but at the end of the day, consumers are needing cash. They need the money to go spend. Utility is really the most important thing. And so, there are countless use cases underway to sort of expand and change and, really think differently about what money means and how it's used in market. But for the most part, cash is really still king in so many places. And I think it will be for a very, very long time. And when we talked about, I think, depending on where you are and how you measure it, 70, 80, 90% of transactions still occur, in cash anywhere in the world. And so, that will change. That'll change over the next couple of decades, but it's still going to continue to be there. And so that utility, I think, continues to dominate for sure.
Yeah, I was just back from Kenya and Tanzania, and it's amazing how important MoneyGram is in those contexts, right? And Danielle, how novel is this? How can you explain the novelty of this partnership that we're talking about here?
It is, I think, well, first of all, I think it's really the only partnership that exists in this space to be able to deliver this kind of value to the consumer. I think that it's hard to articulate the importance of it, but I think it's also really hard, and we've tried to do videos to be able to show the simplicity of it, but it truly is just so simple as providing your details into your wallet, and then it pulls up MoneyGram's. We've been able to create the infrastructure so that MoneyGram can speak Stellar's language and Stellar can speak MoneyGram's language. And it's so simple from the user standpoint. It actually is one of the things that I think those of you who were here today and listened to Alexis Ohanian talked about, which is really the user-centric design. And what the wallets are trying to do, in addition to working with MoneyGram's platform, is to create that user-centric design so that we can make it simple for the user, so the users who are used to dealing with MoneyGram services already, it won't be that different for them. And for those that aren't used to it, for those that are just used to dealing with a digital wallet, it's going to be simple for them too. So I think that it is, I can't underscore the simplicity of it, which I think gets to the point of how novel it is. Because for so long in our industry, blockchain, we've talked about the technology and the tech stack and how cool the tech stack is. And every time you talk about the tech stack, you lose your audience when you're talking to regulators or when you're talking to traditional financial services, because they're so used to, like, tell us what it's value that this is bringing. And I think that this is, I've spent a lot of time back in DC over the last several months in the United States talking to regulators there, and really they love this because it is the first time when they're actually seeing, oh wait, it's not just about trading, it's not just about purchasing crypto and holding your assets there, it's actually about a use case that makes sense. And the super cool part about this is that we're providing this underlying platform along with Circle for others to build on, but when wallets actually provide the utility of getting things done, like what can users do? Users can pay bills. Users can do whatever they need to do locally, right? This is the issue of all of you developers that are out there focusing on developing to solve the problems that you see around you, that you see that users have. That's what wallets can do, and then easy plug and play into the MoneyGram, the MoneyGram Stellar, the service that MoneyGram is actually offering. Leveraging Stellar and Circle USDC, it just is not only novel, but simple, straightforward, and super. I mean, I sit here and talk about this all the time. Payments aren't sexy,
Whoa,
but they should be sexy. Because, I know, it's hard for you to hear that. But it's true. Nobody wants to talk about that. They want to talk about how people are making 23% or not on their crypto lending experiences elsewhere. But this is truly how you bring this to the masses. This is how we change the world. We don't change the world with lending. We change the world with this.
What about
well, that's tough to
Alex?
follow, but no, I mean, it's interesting. I completely agree because, you know, at the end of the day, I do, you know, coming from not a crypto background, you know, thanks to a friend in the audience here, we got into mining a while ago and kind of learned my way through it. But, you know, it's not particularly, I think, intuitive for many people. I think, you know, whatever you grow up with is typically what you're very comfortable with. And I think that resonates across whatever it is that you do for a living and whatever you build and whatever you're sort of passionate about. And so, you know, to think differently about crypto, you know, when you think non-custodial wallet, right, that is not, I think, intuitive for most mainstream consumers today, right? Particularly, you know, when you get into elder, you know, generations. And so certain things resonate and certain things don't. And so there's complexities around that. And I do think simple cash in, cash out, simple ramp, simple, you know, simple processes, simple things for simple people in many cases, right? When you take complex technologies and you can make them easy for consumers to use, I do think is revolutionary. And that's actually what facilitates more utilization. That's actually what moves things along. I think when you look at the partners that we've selected so far and onboarded from a wallet perspective, you know, we were doing some interesting things on marketing when we actually turned the marketing actually to the wallet and said, now you promote this service. We've actually seen downloads increase tremendously because it's now the wallet talking to the consumer about something that they can actually relate to in a very different way than perhaps they could before. So I think we're actually beginning to sort of transcend consumers that were sort of in the crypto space that want on and off ramps, and you can now then take that into sort of mainstream consumers that weren't in crypto and start bringing them into the market, which is really what I think a lot of this is about, right? And so for MoneyGram, the infinite number of use cases and sort of where you can take it gets really pretty exciting for us. But I do think sort of the innovation around it in its simplicity is actually quite brilliant.
Yeah. And since the launch, it has been like 4 months, right?
June, yeah.
And what have you been hearing from the users, the consumers? What's new from that time on?
Well, we had some great videos put out by some of you that are here about your use of it, which has been super awesome to see. I think that well, right now, I just want to highlight the challenge of what we collectively did, and mostly now what MoneyGram is doing. We launched globally, and we launched globally on purpose. We could have actually selected just one country, which I think maybe you guys would have liked, maybe we would have liked. It's much simpler to do that, but it doesn't actually demonstrate the value of what we're doing if we just launch one country. So we launched globally Cash Out, and that has been remarkable to see the work that MoneyGram's team has brought to the table. It is a constant collaboration to make sure that we're not missing something, but remember, it's not just Stellar and MoneyGram, it's also the wallets. So there's a whole different, that we have to coordinate, and it's not, I mean, we're all different companies. And so it's just been really interesting to see that kind of work, but it's work for good, right? We're going to get to this process where it's even simpler than it is today to be able to make this happen. So we launched globally with 200 countries Cash Out. We have 14 countries Cash In. I don't know those countries, but
they include Brazil.
But it includes Brazil.
Yes, which is great.
Very important.
Huge.
Yeah.
Very
Great.
important. Ronaldo's from Brazil.
Yeah.
And the 14 countries, there are other people here who know them, and I think it's really important for us to say that we're also extending that as quickly as we can to have Cash in as many countries as we can get to. It's very different from Cash In versus Cash Out in terms of the experience at the local agents. And I probably should have mentioned this before with the novelty of it, I also want to underscore the reason why what MoneyGram does, and the reason why Alex said, I welcome you all to join in this process and go give it a go yourself, creating an agent network of just under 400,000 agents globally that they don't own and control. Remember that. Like, that's also complicated. So we have the agents who are independent entities who also need to create value for them. You have MoneyGram, you have the underlying network, Stellar, and then you have the wallets, and then you have Circle. All of these things that come together, it's only going to get better and better, but we've seen transactions in 63 countries. We do our own testing. We have Uber testers that go out and do testing separate and apart from what MoneyGram is doing. To make sure that this is all working in these regions. So we've seen 63 countries already, and we're constantly testing in more and more. So it's awesome to see what's already happened.
Amazing. From the MoneyGram perspective, what's going on?
Yeah, there's a lot of cool things happening. I think you touched on one of the most important ones. So Cash Out is actually very easy for us as an organization. When you're in the wallet and you say you want to sell and convert to USDC and pick up cash, it's very seamless. We generate a reference number, and you can go get the money. To actually get cash in is actually a more complicated process for us. Our system is completely built for sending money. Hey, I want to send to X. Here's my information. Send money. When you walk into the location, you start saying, I want to load a wallet. I want to buy USDC. I want to do, to your point, we're distributed 400,000 locations. You think about how many, that's at least 2 staff members per location, if not more. You think about the infinite complexities of that and the turnover. So to actually get our agent network to think differently about what we're doing, to think that, oh, we're actually selling something or buying or providing a different service than simply a remittances, it's a big effort for us. And actually a lot of it is technology based as well, because some of our systems weren't even quite built that way. So that's one huge thing that's going on. I think the other thing that's probably the more important side of it is when you're bridging fiat and crypto, you actually double down on compliance, which is interesting as well. Because in the fiat world, it's obviously very heavily regulated, right? To get a license, to get KYC on individuals, to get KYA information, as we call it, on agents, or KYB on the business, the background checks that we have to go through, those processes to actually onboard partners is quite rigorous. And some of the wallets that we've talked to don't really want to go through that process or aren't comfortable in that process. And unfortunately, that's a standard that you have to go through in order to convert down. So some of those conversations have been around that, and that's sort of an important message. We've also found wallets as well that actually aren't integrated with Stellar yet, and that adds another process step in the flow. So I think getting as many wallets to actually code to the Stellar network as possible in advance actually helps speed up sort of those onboarding processes. And then from a consumer perspective, we actually have to do KYC on those customers, right? So a lot of people live in sort of a non-custodial world, and they haven't gone through a big KYC process before. But in order to put money in or pull money out, you have to actually go through that process. And then From a government and a banking perspective, we've gotten a lot of questions from regulators on what are you doing about the crypto? How are you ensuring the crypto is safe? And so we've actually had to add chain analytics and other processes into the flows. Ironically, we now have so much information about the customer and about the data that there's actually no one in government to actually give it to and report on it. So we're not actually sure what to do with some of it. But we know a lot now, so we're very compliant, and I think that's actually pretty remarkable. And to your point about, or Danelle's point earlier about how do you go build this, grow it, and why is this so innovative and unique, and why is it getting so much traction from regulators is because it is compliant. And the fact that we're taking KYC standards in the fiat world, AML, terrorist financing standards, fraud standards, and applying that and bridging two worlds together and then using the technology and the compliance processes on the crypto side in the blockchain world, I think is putting together two things that are somewhat disparate, but actually turning it into a seamless process. And that's been huge for talking to regulators and getting approvals to continue to move the process forward. So those have been some key learnings. We've had some. Again, I think the biggest issues with consumers has been on the front end when they've tried to, go to an agent and say what they're trying to do. That's probably the most complicated thing, but we'll work through that over time.
Yeah.
One thing I just wanted to add is that we have 34 wallets in the queue.
Yeah.
34 wallets. So it's awesome. And once we see these wallets get through the process, some of the process that Alex just mentioned with respect to providing the type of KYB information that they need from a regulatory standpoint, and then also making sure they're integrated with Stellar, it's like the sky's the limit here, which is what I love.
So can you talk a little bit more about the onboarding process for wallets?
Well, I can tell you that from an onboarding standpoint, what you need to do to make it the most streamlined is your wallet should be integrated with Stellar already. If it's integrated with Stellar already, it makes it a lot simpler from the technology side. We're working on solutions. I think we announced today an Anchor platform. But I think I can also talk about that we're developing a wallet SDK that's going to make it a lot simpler for folks to integrate quickly with Stellar from that standpoint. And obviously right now you already have the Stellar ecosystem proposals to be able to do that kind of work on your own, the standards to integrate. But we're trying to make it faster for everyone to do that. So that from an onboarding standpoint, that's the first step. And then Alex has the onboarding process on his side.
I mean, I would, if you don't, I'd hire yourself a compliance officer, or at least pretend you have one to begin with. That would be a good start. And then just being prepared to answer questions about, who you are, who your business is, who the owners are, beneficial owners, et cetera, is a big part of it. And once we get through those, I think the rest of it becomes quite easy. But those are probably the most difficult pieces for a lot of the new startup wallets out there that just haven't gone through those processes before or live in a world where it's not really required. So.
Yeah. So the topic of Meridian this year is the urgency of doing, right? And I guess you two might be excited because you actually accomplished something that is huge in this space, right?
Yeah.
I think it's one of the best examples out there. So what can you tell us about the next steps and basically what you're looking for in terms of the future?
So from the Stellar side, from the SDF has always been really focused on anchors. We consider MoneyGram an anchor, one of our largest anchors and global anchors. So it's a really, really important piece to be able to bring to the network. We're still focused on developing anchors. We think that local solutions and having anchors that can issue assets in their local currency and be able to deliver that value to their end users locally is a pretty important piece. So we're going to constantly be focused there. With respect to this, though, we just want to see this grow and flourish from the standpoint of more wallets that can come onto it. As I said, we're working on the wallet SDK, which is going to make it so easy that all you have to do is push a button. Right, Jake? Just push a button. Just kidding. So easy to be able to make this whole thing, to make the integrations more, even more simple from the Stellar side. And hopefully that'll just bring a lot more people to the network from that standpoint. I want all wallets to be thinking about the utility that they can offer their consumers, because that's also a really important step. What do you want your users to do with this wallet once they have it? If it's just cash on, cash off, that's awesome too. But there's so much more opportunity to be able to hold the value, to send the value, to be able to, potentially use that value to pay for your bills, their bills, to take loans. There's many, many different things that they can do. So I think that that's the other part I want people to think about. This relationship with the network that MoneyGram has built is something that can be leveraged in so many different ways. And again, I just said a few minutes ago, the sky's the limit. It truly is. The value that you can bring to your consumers from a wallet standpoint and then be able to leverage this on and off ramp is something that there's no equivalent to it in the market today. And I venture to guess it's going to be really hard for others to develop this kind of equivalent. With the fees on Stellar being next to nothing, and with the simplicity of and the focus of the network, I think and what we've built from an anchor standpoint, it just creates huge opportunity. So I think that's one of the things that I think the future we'll see. And then I just think that it's with USDC is one of the things that we rely on today, but we also have other assets that potentially could come into this. CoinMe, we have a relationship with CoinMe, which I know MoneyGram does as well. That's another on and off ramp that we're focused on. So there's just huge opportunity here to be able to continue to watch it grow.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've never been an anchor before. Actually, that's not true. So, like 10 years ago, someone wrote an article and said, what's MoneyGram going to do with their boat anchor of a cash business? So, I guess we're going to turn it into a real anchor and use it for something good. So, so that's kind of cool. But no,
when we first started working together, the MoneyGram CFO said, you actually have stuff on your website that says we're very slow at MoneyGram and that it's an antiquated business. And I was like, that's good for us to know as we enter these conversations.
Yeah. I think you changed the wording.
I think we might have deleted it.
It says slightly faster or something different. So I've got a lot. I feel like there's a laundry list of stuff. But one of the things I wanted to mention was back on the settlement side, one of the things we're going to be doing, this is sort of more for MoneyGram, but we're going to be doing working with Circle to do real-time settlement with Scott at United Texas Bank. And I talked about how we get paid first, but what happens is we get paid the USDC, but that goes into a MoneyGram USDC account, and then we can liquidate that, and that account is with Scott's bank at United Texas Bank, and so. But actually, if we can actually have funds with USDC actually at the bank as well, then we can actually just seamlessly trade real-time 24/7 and actually move money within the bank, which is actually another evolutionary kind of thing, which is awesome. So I want to mention that because that is sort of another move toward real-time settlement, which no one in the world is really doing today in the fiat space or between fiat and crypto, which is pretty awesome. On the front end, what we're really working on is improving the product. We want to roll out, obviously, more cash in countries. So we have a lot to do to enhance that and do more messaging communication with our partners. We also have a vision to add more front end as well. So maybe we can load off of our MoneyGram.com platform, which would be tremendously exciting instead of just through cash. We also want to do back end as well. So one of the things we've built out over the last few years has been connection to over 5 billion bank accounts and mobile wallets across over 100 countries. And digital receives are becoming more and more important. As we talk about the broken financial systems, right? There's blockchain and crypto, but then there's also a lot happening on the fiat side to improve those situations for consumers in many markets. You talked about M-Pesa. There's ZPay in Ghana, for example, and countless number of other wallets popping up all over the world. Consumers are looking to actually use MoneyGram to push money into those because they're able to use their mobile phones at the point of sale in those markets, and so. The ability to convert crypto and buy crypto and sell it and move it back and forth between those fiat wallets is actually, I think, pretty critical. When you look at our India business, for example, about 80% of all our transactions today go either into a bank account or into a wallet, and only 20% is picked up in cash. So if we're converting crypto and pushing it to India, we're going to be wanted to push into those bank accounts and into those wallets, not just picked up in cash. So I think from a utility perspective, there's a ton happening there. And then one of the most exciting things for us, again, is actually tonight, U.S. time, we're actually launching on the MoneyGram.com platform in the U.S. buy-sell crypto with our partner CoinMe. And so that's going to, for the first time, enable consumers that are on the MoneyGram.com network to actually buy Bitcoin, Ethereum, and actually Litecoin. We're starting very small. This is like sort of our foray into the world. But when you actually then think about consumers coming to the MoneyGram.com platform to send money around the world, if they can now buy, sell crypto, right, the next phase of that then is to be able to transfer crypto. part of that then, when you start thinking about concepts and where does MoneyGram want to go, if we're integrated with non-custodial wallets or have our own non-custodial wallet, and you start talking about stablecoin, we can virtually move money anywhere in the world, and then through the MoneyGram network, just consumers can pull those funds down anytime they want to. So when you think about what does the next generation of financial services look like, when you think about, really what, I think crypto, when you think about blockchain, when you think about interoperability with fiat, to me that's sort of, the golden goose egg or whatever the right phrase is I think it's really interesting when you start thinking about what money movement means when you can actually interoperate between two different worlds seamlessly globally. So that's kind of on the future radar for us, and that's something that we're super interested in really pushing and doing more about. So, but at the end, we have to always start where we are, right? And we need to continue to focus on the user experience. We're going to put a lot more wallets onto the network, and when we do, then we'll be able to do a lot more marketing, a lot more promoting, and it becomes more seamless, right? So there is a little bit of a network effect that we have to get, and we have to continue to build. The partners we have right now are great, but we only have a few, and so getting these other 34 on board, will be critical for us to continue to push the growth.
Yep. What about the economics of the model? Is it free for the consumer?
It currently is, thanks to the Stellar Development Foundation. That's a really interesting thing. I'm glad you actually mentioned that, because I think traditional money transfer companies, and probably one of the reasons that those kind words are written on your website at one point in time, I think there's a perception that money should move seamlessly and freely around the world. And I think that's a beautiful vision. I don't think it's actually a real one. And there's a variety of reasons for that. Number one, I'm very cynical. But number two, which is probably more important, again, is that borders are designed to be protected, right? So the seamless flow of funds is not really good for anybody if you think about it in that way. And so when we step back and you start thinking about kind of the evolution of funds flow and kind of where things can go, what we're trying to do is really think about it from all the different permutations and all the different opportunities that are out there. And so when I get the most excited about where we're going to go, Danelle comes with new ideas, she comes with new things for us. We try to blend those together and try to make it work.
I do think it's really important to understand that part of the reason why this free for a year is a really important part of what we're developing is that we're testing, we're making sure that everything works right, we're getting onboarded. There's so many different pieces to it. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that fees have a really important role here. Because I think that you see a lot of maybe larger tech companies who focus on, oh, it's free, it's just free, go ahead and send money and it's free. The agents that are on and have their feet on the ground in region, this is part of how they make their living. This is part of how they sustain the growth of their own companies in their own countries. These are like small mom and pop shops, bodegas. Sometimes they're CVS, and it happens to be in the United States, they're CVS. Sometimes they can be supermarkets. But this is part of the value that they're providing. They have people in store who are providing you a service. They need to get paid too. So while fees have a role, we want, and we're constantly badgering, the fees to be very, very competitive and as low as they can be.
And that's right. But it's also cash handling costs, right? It's also the cost of compliance in those markets. It's reporting to their governments, right? So again, so it isn't, it is expensive, right? It's not seamless, and so anything that can be done to reduce cost is huge. Anything that benefits consumers is huge. But to your point, economies need to move, they need to get paid, right? I mean, there is a lot. Every time you talk about compliance, costs go up. Every time you talk about bank handling, cash charges, costs go up. Every time you talk about foreign currency volatility and fluctuations, costs go up, right? Risk premiums come into play, and all these things, occur. So I think anytime, again, like when you're coming in with new ideas, when you're thinking about we can do it this way, we can do it differently, we can change it, we can support that.
They're all really good ideas
huge,
when I come in with them.
They're all really great. They're the best ideas.
And of course, being a member of the Stellar Development Foundation, I have to ask, how do you guys think this can help with financial inclusion, right? So I come from Brazil. I live in a country in which this is a huge problem. If you look to other parts of the world, especially during the COVID crisis, when you do not have access to financial services, that can mean life or death, right? So how does it help?
Well, I mean, I think this just gets back to the point that I made earlier about the 60%. And that number is probably much larger than we can imagine as we sit here in this room. And that is the reason why we really wanted to make this happen, is because of the true notion of financial inclusion. It's really easy to focus on and off ramps when you just deal with bank accounts. It's a lot easier if we did that. A lot easier if we just focus on credit cards. But if you really want to reach people and really change the lives of humans and get them involved in an economy at scale that they've never been able to be a part of, this is what I think blockchain is particularly awesome at. I love the idea of payroll for this. Like, think about leveraging this for payroll so that people can get paid in their own country, in their own currency, leveraging MoneyGram's service and also the Stellar network and what's available, and these awesome wallets that are built on top of it. I love it for aid. If you think about aid in countries that are deeply in need, and there are organizations all around the world that focus on getting aid into those humans, and the cost associated with getting aid there is very different than we can actually imagine. And a lot of human capital gets spent in terms of bringing people together to be able to deliver cash. This is actually a super streamlined approach to be able to make it happen. So there are so many opportunities to be able to reach those that aren't included in our current financial infrastructure. That's the thing that I'm here for. That's why I came to the SDF. That's why I'm in this space. That's why I'm focused on this. And that's why I care so much about getting this right, getting it right for everybody. It can't just be like a system where we say, oh, it's super easy and we don't have to charge anybody ever, because that's just not realistic. So we need to think about sustainability for the wallets, sustainability for MoneyGram, sustainability for the agents. And that, to me, is how you really actually create a solution that makes sense. If we live in a world where we just pretend that none of those people need to get paid and we can just fund this out of somebody's balance sheet, then that's actually not creating the kind of equitable access that we really want to see. That's kind of a fake world. We're actually trying to create this real-world experience that can be replicated and utilized by everyone. And that's what I think from the financial inclusion standpoint and why we care so much about this.
That's great. Alex.
I think they're coming to take me away, but no, at the end of the day, we talk about everything you just said. I think is incredibly well said. So, I mean, I'll just reemphasize. Financial stability for all is really what our industry is about. It's getting money from point A to point B for the betterment of humans and humanity in that sense. And so, any way to do that more efficiently, more affordably, when the money arrives, creating more utility, creating more stability, giving consumers access to things that they otherwise can't have that's what it's all about. So, I think that's the beautiful thing about the partnership. I think that's the beautiful thing about you all being a foundation, right? Which is you're trying to give something to the world. We're an evil corporation. We have to make money, but I think we actually have a great mission and a great value. And we try to be a corporation that provides a lot of value to the world and not one that just takes from it. So I love what we do, and I think we do it extremely well. And this partnership, I think, just enhances that in so many different ways that just makes it so special. So thank you for that.
And one of the things that I'd like to also add is that right now we're seeing a lot of organic growth for the wallets and for the use of this. And MoneyGram's actually put a lot of effort from the marketing standpoint for the wallets. And it's like we're going to see this. We've already seen the numbers increase because of that. So this is something that I think is really important for us to see and to get even more wallets interested in this process. So those of you who haven't already signed into the queue to become a partner of MoneyGram service, please do so now.
That's fantastic. I believe we're almost out of time. So I think this is the urgency of doing, right? So please, guys, help me thank our speakers. That was really great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.